Good morning. Welcome to this webinar in which we will explore the consequences of Oracle's recent announcement regarding Agile PLM, what that means for Agile customers, and what we think will happen in the future. My name is Dries Doge, and I run products and services at RestState. I have been with the company for 5 years, and before that, I used to work at Agile Software since 2000. I was part of the Oracle acquisition and left them in a couple of years ago to join RestState. You can say I know the history, the players, the product in and out. With me, I have Matt Hopkins. Matt, can you please introduce yourself?
Sure, Dries. So my name's Matt Hopkins. I'm a developer and lead architect with ZeroWeight. I've been with the company 9+ years, and I was heavily involved with the creation and have been involved with ongoing deployment and services engagements for our state products, which we'll be discussing later in this webinar.
Thank you, Matt. Before we start, a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, we are recording this session, and after the session, you will be sent a link via email. During the webinar, if you have any questions, please submit them via the chat window, and we will address them at the end, of course, time permitting. We will not be providing product demos today out of respect for your time. However, we will be hosting demo webinars exclusively for those attending this webinar so that you can pick and choose which technologies might be most meaningful for your needs. With this out of the way, let's dive into the agenda. So for those of you not familiar with CWS, first of all, we'll do a short introduction, and then we'll talk about the roadmap that Oracle published for Agile. After that, we'll talk about what this roadmap means for our clients and the different go-forward options that are available to them at this point. Options such as staying the course with Agile or moving to the cloud, and then we'll talk about how ZWS can help you keep Agile around and or help you in your move to a cloud-based solution. And then finally, time permitting, we will have a Q&A session where we will get to your questions one way or another. If we don't get to your question during the webinar, we will follow up with you individually. ZWS was founded in 2000 and focuses exclusively on the product lifecycle management space. As a company, we've grown up in the Agile PLM ecosystem, and in the last couple of years, we've expanded to other PLM systems besides Agile as well. Our focus is on the implementation of PLM systems, migrating data to and from PLM systems, integrating PLM with other systems such as CAD, ERP, CRM, MES, and anything that could use product-related information. We also focus on automating non-value-adding steps in PLM processes. And finally, most recently, we've added the administration of PLM systems, as most Agile administrators are currently nearing retirement age, and companies are not replacing their expertise given the uncertainty around Agile PLM's future. Partner-wise, our partners are the traditional partners you would see in a PLM world, with like Oracle, PTC, SolidWorks, but recently we've also branched out to other systems such as Propel and SpecRite. Here you have an overview of the tools that we developed to extend Agile to keep it relevant and productive for the next couple of years, not just for our clients, but first of all, or in the beginning, for ourselves. AttributeState is a process automation framework for automations. Cloud-State is a process orchestrator for cloud to on-premise integrations. DesignState is our CAD integration tool for Creo and PDM Pro integrations into Agile. DocState is our advanced reporting engine and data publishing tool. RestState is a REST interface wrapper around Agile to give it a more modern interface for integrations, as well as for task-specific user interfaces. Then we have LoadState, which is our compliance data loading tool to bring compliance data from third parties and suppliers into Agile PG&C. Then we have RefState and description state, which are a revision and description generator that generates a revision or description based on attributes of an item in Agile. Industry-wise, these are the industries we mainly serve. There's high-tech, there's industrial, there's medical device, there's aerospace and defense, and consumer goods. There's about 110 logos on this slide, and as you can see, this is the who's who of each of these respective industries. Of the clients you see here on this slide, these are the customers that have implemented and own some of our zero-8 state products. Okay, with this behind us, let's move our attention to why we're here. Oracle recently published this slide in which they announced that they're extending Agile support until 2030. Now, there's a couple of things or remarks to be made regarding this slide. First of all, it's an implicit indictment of Oracle's PLM cloud strategy. Their cloud PLM product that's supposed to replace Agile has performance issues, still is not lacks features compared to Agile, and as a result, Agile has to stay around longer than they originally expected. It also means that this date may shift even further into the future, depending on the adoption of Oracle's cloud PLM. The 937 release you see mentioned here is nothing but a roll-up of all the patches they have issued in the last couple of years. There's no new features planned in that release, at least up till now. So that begs the question, is staying with Agile a safe bet? But due to the fact that Agile has not evolved in the last 5 years, it's really fallen behind now in terms of integration, its automation capabilities, its reporting, user interface and usability, and the API technologies that it uses. And don't forget that since Oracle hasn't invested in the last 5 years, why would they start investing now into this product? The next thing is Oracle is probably not going to make investments because they want to push their customers to Oracle Cloud. And finally, everybody with deep Agile knowledge has left or is working on the cloud product. So there's really nobody working or left behind to work on new features for Agile. Because these risks involved in staying on Agile, we would think, well, moving to the cloud is the answer. Sure, there's some good things to be said about the cloud. It's modern, it saves you money, it scales beautifully up and down. Operationally, it makes you very efficient. However, if you're an Agile customer accustomed to Agile's current functionality, its ability to handle large amounts of data, the level of sophistication that Agile can offer you, and expect the performance of on-premise or WAN-based solutions, then there will be issues for you going to the cloud. What we are finding, having moved companies to the cloud and have heard from other Agile customers that are trying to move to the cloud or have moved to the cloud, is that in general, cloud solutions still miss the breadth of functionality and performance that you would expect based on your Agile experience. And frankly, it's no wonder, since we're really comparing a 20-year-old or plus 20-year plus technology with a technology that's only a couple of years old. The maturity is just not there at this point in time. Therefore, our recommendation today for most companies is to stay on Agile and figure out ways to make Agile more modern, more capable, and fill in the gaps that are created by Oracle's lack of investment. Up until the cloud solutions are ready, robust, and mature enough to handle your current Agile experience. Your investment in those technologies is protected because we are moving our technologies to the cloud as well. So what we're proposing is something that is the best of both worlds. You can continue to move forward with Agile using our technologies, and you can adopt the cloud when it's ready for you. With this, I will turn it over to Matt to talk about AttributeState DocState, and RestState, which are three of the modules that we were talking about earlier on one of the slides, and that we feel are the most important and relevant technologies to address Agile's current shortcomings. Go ahead, Matt.
Thank you, Dries. So as Dries said, I'm going to talk about three of our state products today, these being AttributeState, DocState, and RestState. And collectively, we feel these products can take your Agile system, which is a mature system, but obviously aging in a lot of its integration technologies and extensibility, and elevate it to more of the status of a cloud-based application while we wait for cloud PLM to really become available and robust enough to handle all the use cases that are required of it. So we're going to start with AttributeState, and AttributeState's goal is to solve automation problems within Agile. We like to call AttributeState a customization framework. So it's geared more toward treating customizations as a product where we can solve them via configuration in a lot of cases, and only where necessary delve into more complex coding and scripting solutions to implement the customizations. So let's take a look at challenges we face when attempting to automate things within Agile using traditional customization techniques. Our first one is what we call PX proliferation. And that just essentially means that as your Agile system matures and as you get more users on it, as you add automations and customizations to improve that user experience and automate processes, the trade-off of that, as each of these customizations requires a separate Java or Groovy PX to perform them. When you get a lot of PXs, your management requirements become more complex. And it can also slow down the user experience within Agile for your users using the web client or Java client. And that if you have multiple PXs firing on different events, such as action menu picks or workflow status changes, it can slow that experience down as those things chain together and take up resources to execute. Another challenge is keeping a handle on the cost of development and maintenance of PXs. So when you're writing Java or Groovy, it requires a resource with a programming background, typically an IT type resource, either in-house or vendor. Each one of these is a mini IT project where you have to keep track of source control. You have to have tools to build and deploy it. And then, of course, your Agile administrator who needs to configure these things in the Java client needs to keep track of all of the different customizations that are running, how they're triggered, the order they run in. And as that gets into the tens or hundreds, as some of you may know already, becomes quite a challenge to keep up with, and a lot of hours spent over the weeks and months to manage those tasks, which results in additional costs to your organization. The third challenge is when you use traditional customization, you can sometimes fence yourself in with it. One thing that a term we use is version lock, where if you have customizations written for an older version of Agile and you're moving to a newer version that may change APIs or change how certain supporting files and libraries work with the customization framework, it can require you to update your PXs accordingly, which means you've got to bring in resources to do that. You also have to do regression testing on it. So again, additional hours and costs for that. It doesn't migrate to a cloud-based PLM because they're very Agile specific. It uses Agile's framework. So if you're moving to a cloud PLM, you've got to rewrite those customizations that you still need, the ones that cloud PLM doesn't offer, and you still require for your business processes. You've got to translate to the cloud PLM. Visibility also can be a problem in that when you have just lots of these PXs and resources come and go who created them for you, it's tough to know, are you running the latest version? Do you have the latest source code? Sometimes you end up having to decompile PXs and reach out to other vendors to come in and help you to figure out what all's running, when it's running, how it works. So that can definitely get to be an issue as your system matures and evolves. So let's look at how AttributeState kind of improves this situation. So being a customization framework, as I said earlier, one of the key things that it offers is your customization, configuration, and scripts are all checked into Agile in the file vault via a spreadsheet and optionally some supporting library files. AttributeState uses FreeMarker templates, which is a high-level scripting language. We feel that's easier to learn than Java or Groovy. So what it does is lets you, for common tasks such as setting or clearing attributes, you can do most of that with pure configuration in AttributeState. Very little coding. It's something that's very easy to set up, very easy to see what's going on when you look at the configuration spreadsheet in terms of what values are being set and updated or cleared and where that data is coming from. When you're drilling down into your Agile data to set attributes or derive values for them, you can access any related objects, any table rows to really any level. So you could, for example, starting with an item, you could go into its where used table, loop through that to obtain a where used item, and then inside of that where used item, look up its pending changes. So you can really get into whatever level you need to get at your data to set or work with. It also offers a lookup list and table facility. And this is very valuable when you're doing lists for validating data. Lookup lists and tables are great for translations. So if you're doing any kind of translation of data, say from Agile to a downstream ERP system or a quality system or a cloud system, you can use those tables to handle your translations. And when you need to move away from simple configuration for more complex customizations, FreeMarker can easily call into the Java-based Agile SDK. So you can get down to that level when you need to, but we try to make the easy things easy with AttributeState and then give you that ability to do the advanced configuration when you need to. Really, probably the key feature that I feel like in my experience when I've used AttributeState that really adds a lot of value is the reuse factor. In that when you're working with regular PXs, a lot of times you have a template, you've got boilerplate code that gets included for each one. And if you ever want to change any of that, you've got to go change it in all the places it's used. With a central framework, you can create these reusable functions and macros in FreeMarker for bits of code that multiple PXs may use, such as moving a change through a workflow status or adding an approver or an observer. And these can be called by multiple customizations and changed in one place. So it really tends to reduce the overall size of your code base when you use this framework and lets you take more advantage of reuse because you can quickly see all of your reusable bits and pieces that are available and say, I'm going to use that instead of rewriting it again. So that's proven to be a real time saver. So if we ask why should we switch to using AttributeState with Agile, or if you're using customizations or what you can get out of it if you're an existing AttributeState customer, increased productivity is one. So when you automate and enhance your business processes, you make Agile easier and more efficient to use. And if you've got organizational change initiatives, it's easy to facilitate those and get people to buy into them when you can offer a streamlined process. So when you've got a good set of automations, it just makes the system easier to use. Users are more likely to adopt these processes. And when you have simple automations, often the business or Agile admin can take those on since they're more configuration based in AttributeState. And this results in letting you have less dependence on IT for those reasons, in that the the business users can implement these simple configurations versus waiting on IT to implement a customization for you using traditional methods. Improved data quality is another reason. So if you can derive as much of your data when you're entering data in Agile as possible, that results in less data entry and process mistakes. Also, it can do transformation enrichment for you. So if, say, you have attributes in your system that flow to a downstream system like ERP, you can have those automatically calculated and set on your item data or your change data, anything where you might need attributes that are going to flow to another system. Those can be set and derived to, again, avoid having someone manually enter data and potentially introduce mistakes. Cost reduction is the third reason. So, and this is what really everyone's looking for when you're trying to make your aging Agile system more efficient, is when you can do these kinds of automations quickly and respond to requests your users have for, can I automate this or can I make this easier? It reduces time spent in Agile. It lets people work more quickly. It lets them get back to other parts of their jobs versus doing data entry. And that results in saving money and improving your bottom line. So really that's why we invest in these tools, to get an ROI and a cost savings out of it. And streamlining your business processes, obviously that translates to cost reduction as well. So we're going to look at a customer story for AttributeState. And the customer is Dell. So Dell has a really large and deeply customized Agile installation. They've been with Agile since really the beginning and have grown with it as it's matured. They've got lots of process extensions and event handlers running. They've got lots of integrations that flow into Agile and flow downstream. And they have a very overloaded IT department. So their business is generally left waiting in the backlog of IT for requests for customizations or changes to existing customizations or automations. And it's one of those things where a lot of times they could be taking advantage of something, but IT just didn't have the bandwidth to work on it quickly. So they end up spending more time, waiting on those automations and doing more manual work. So they have a team that kind of sits in the middle between IT and the Dell business that uses Agile, and they're basically responsible for administering Agile configuration and things like that. So they reached out to us to see if we could use AttributeState to port some of these existing customizations into a format that this Agile admin team could manage versus IT. So what we were able to do is take a pretty large number of customizations, around 60 or so, and convert them into plain text free marker rules stored in the AttributeState spreadsheet, and also look at all the common code and convert that into reusable functions and macros. So we were able to get all the PXs ported over pretty quickly and train up their Agile admin team to be able to manage these PXs as well as create their own customizations without needing to lean on IT like they had before. So what this has resulted in is they now have 2 users there that are able to manage the AttributeState customizations we did for them, and they've created quite a few more on their own. They're able to respond quickly to requests from the business and only push things to IT that are more complicated and require those types of development resources. But for a large majority of the requests they get, they can handle them on their own. And this has really been a big boost in making their Agile system more productive for the business users. The business is much more satisfied with the responsiveness they get for requests for automation and customizations. And when you've got a large company like Dell with a lot of users, that translates into quite a bit of cost savings. So I think they would definitely feel like their investment in AttributeState has been returned many times over. So we're going to move on to our second state product, which is DocState. And the DocState product is geared towards solving reporting and data extraction problems, as well as integration problems within your Agile system, and making making that a lot easier to manage and giving you a lot of extra functionality that you don't get with the out-of-the-box Agile. So the DocState product is actually two components in one product, which is kind of unique, makes it unique from our other state products. So the first component is what we call the web application component, and it's geared toward generation of on-demand content. So it's really geared to being able to step in and pick up where Agile's out-of-box reporting sort of drops off. So DocState gives you the ability to generate any kind of text content on demand, like XML, CSV, HTML, as well as binary content, which includes MS Word, MS Excel, PDF, or it can also do arbitrary binary formats, such as creating zip files or pulling out CAD model files or 3D neutral files off your items or designs. You really can get at any type of data in your Agile system and export it. Similar to AttributeState, the templates that are used to generate this content are all checked into Agile as attachments. So you've got great visibility to all of your content generation templates, and it's easy to update them, and that you don't have to go track them down on the Agile server file system or pull them out of a jar file somewhere. You just find them in Agile, edit them, check it in, and the update is effective once you do that. These templates give you full access to your Agile object graphs, much like we said with AttributeState. They use FreeMarker. So the same thing applies. They can easily get at any level of data within your Agile system for extraction. And then the other side of DocState is the integration component. So unlike the on-demand web application component, this one's triggered by events within your Agile system, and it's geared toward producing content as a result of something like a workflow status change or an actions menu pick. So the great thing about this is this opens the door for your Agile system to reach out to other systems much more efficiently than its current aging integration technology, ACS, which produces an XML format, but you're kind of limited in that what that format looks like. It's pretty fixed and what you can get out of it. Versus with the integration component, you can create templates to produce your data in any format you want. It can perform tasks such as calling out to REST APIs, so your Agile system can update data in cloud systems like Jira or Confluence. It can call out to internal systems like an ERP system or a data quality system and utilize API, REST or SOAP APIs there to update data. It makes it a much more affordable alternative to expensive integration middleware such as Informatica or Magic XPI. And with the content templates being FreeMarker based, it enables non-developers to be able to enhance and configure the integration, whereas a lot of existing more complex integrations require having dedicated staff to do that. So let's take a look at another customer story and this one's for DocState. The company is Smiths Interconnect. So Smiths Interconnect was using the PIP product from Oracle to integrate Agile with their EBS ERP system. And as a lot of you may know, the PIP is currently end of life, and it has a reputation for being complex and a bit of a bear to manage. And that was the case for Smiths. They struggled daily with ECOs that failed to transfer or errors in transfer that they had to go manually correct within their Oracle EBS system. A lot of hours were spent doing that. They emphasized when they were reaching out to us as one of the vendors they were considering that this was a big cost sink for them, where they had to spend a lot of time manually fixing things. It took people away from their other tasks they needed to be working on to be doing data entry and cleanup. And one of the other things was when new manufacturers were added in Agile, or they added BOM substitutions, those all took manual effort from their EBS admin to enter into EBS because the PIP didn't transfer those. So the solution we came up for them with DocState was to rip out the PIP and replace it with a DocState based integration. It used a simpler architecture than PIP, and that the integration runs entirely within Agile and communicates directly with EBS. So that alone enabled them to save some money because they could decommission the PIP servers. They didn't have to pay a license cost for it anymore. So they had less infrastructure to maintain there. It also was able to automate the creation of the manufacturers and the BOM substitutions versus those having to be manually done. So their EBS admin didn't have to spend hours doing that each week. And really the key benefits that we achieved through here, to sum it up, was better error reporting and resolution. We were able to take a look at these cryptic errors they got from the PIP and say, hey, let's make this error, let's understand what causes it and give them a better error message. So when someone had a change order that didn't transfer, they could see, oh, okay, this is what's wrong. I need to work with the EBS admin or fix data in Agile. It was easier for them to resolve those more quickly. The configuration was a lot easier because it's checked into Agile in the file vault. So they're able to update email addresses, things get sent to you, add new workflows that need to transfer, change attribute mappings much more quickly than with the PIP. And it turned out it performed better as well, in that the average time to transfer an ECO to EBS was quite a bit faster than it was with the PIP. So this brings us to our third and final state product we're going to cover today, which is RestState. RestState is a REST API wrapper around the Agile SDK. So almost anything you can do using the Agile Java SDK, you can do with RestState via REST APIs. And when you have something like this around your Agile system, kind of like I said with DocState, where DocState opens the door to integrating Agile with other systems, kind of making it a little more on the level of a cloud system where it can call out to other systems and integrate. RestState kind of enhances your Agile system in the other direction. So it gives it an incoming secure doorway where now your Agile system can consume REST calls versus having to use aging technologies such as SOAP and the Agile SDK. It can now consume REST calls to have data be retrieved and updated. So it elevates Agile to be more of a first-class cloud citizen. So let's look at why we created RestState. So obviously, Agile integration, aging technologies don't really fit into the modern world. So we wanted to simplify that and make integrating to Agile a simpler thing than it is now. One reason for that is purpose-built user interfaces. So a lot of times the existing Agile UI is it's robust, but it's just showing its age. It's not as modern as, say, something like Salesforce or other cloud-based systems. So one way around that is you can create a purpose-built user interface. So if you've got a user that needs to perform a task in Agile and it takes them a lot of time using the UI, the existing UI, you can create a purpose-built UI that uses modern user interface technologies and components to let them have a richer experience to view their Agile data, manipulate it, and then update it. And then that UI calls into RestState to actually read the data and write the data to Agile. Also opens the door for making mobile applications, since most mobile apps talk to a REST backend. If you want to create a mobile app to let your users access Agile data on the go, you can do that. And with it being REST-based, you open the door to having pure front-end developers be able to create apps for your Agile data, and that they can create single-page web apps that don't require a middle application tier, which needs dedicated Java or server-side developers. They can just have a single-page web app taught directly to Agile. REST is scalable. So scalability is another reason. You can horizontally scale it really easily because it's stateless. It also gives you caching benefits. So when RestState returns an Agile object, it caches it and only reads it from the database again if it needs to. And load balancing is easy to do since it's stateless. You can run multiple instances of RestState behind a load balancer. So its key capabilities include being able to extend your Agile PLM functionality, and where Agile doesn't really let you extend the UI, these purpose-built user interfaces give you a way to do that. So you can create better UIs for pieces of Agile where your users will really benefit from it. It also can be used, in addition to UIs, for integration from other systems. So any system that can call into a REST API can then talk to your Agile system. It opens the door. If you can expose that securely externally through HTTPS, you can have cloud-based systems call into your Agile. You make Agile really like kind of a first-class player in the cloud ecosystem. And then, as we said earlier, mobile apps can let your Agile users work on the go if they have a secure connection. So let's take a look at the customer story that we have for RestState, and the company is Teleflex. So Teleflex had an initiative that they called Design Locally, Build Anywhere. And they were struggling with that because a lot of their products have BOMs that are manufacturing plant specific. And being a global company, the bill of materials for some of their products vary depending on where that product was manufactured. It might have a different section of the BOM or piece of the BOM if it's made in Mexico versus being made in Europe versus being made in the US. And the way that they kept track of which plant or plants a BOM component could be produced or assembled in was through attribution in Agile. So they had attributes on the BOM rows that tracked each plant. The trouble with that did a good job of tracking where how the BOM fit into a particular plant or which components were common across all plants, but it was difficult to see that in the existing Agile user interface. They had to do a lot of manual reporting and slicing and dicing of data to try to figure out what a BOM looked like for one plant versus the other. And also, due to some regulatory requirements, certain portions of the BOM couldn't be sent to different geographic areas, being a med dev company. So they needed ways to pull out just the part that went with this plant versus the part that was common. So the solution we came up for them was to create a purpose-built UI to let them manage these BOMs. And this essentially let them launch this UI on a complex part within Agile and see the BOM explode down to all levels, and then have some filters on the top of the UI to say, let me view it for a specific plant, let me view the common pieces. So it let them get that quick visibility they were looking for into which components went with which plant. It also let them make updates to it, which was really big. That required a lot of clicking around and time in Agile to go update the plant specific BOM at especially at multiple levels. So what this let them do is drill down into the BOM, expand it, make all the updates, and see exactly what it was going to look like, and then click a single save button to make changes to it. So obviously that saves a lot of time, results in a lot fewer errors. And the feedback we got from them was this was a tremendous cost savings for them, literally in the millions of dollars. We were pretty shocked to hear how much time they said it saved and how much easier it made this process. So they let us know that RestState and this UI was a big stepping stone for moving closer to that design locally and build anywhere goal. So that concludes our review of the state products. So I'm going to hand it back to Dries for a wrap up.
Thank you very much, Matt. So as a reminder, if you have any questions, please submit them in our chat window, and then we'll address them here in the remainder of the webinar. While you're typing in your questions, we have an offer here. As I said in the beginning, we will be hosting webinar demos that are exclusively for the people attending this webinar, so that you can pick and choose what will be most meaningful for your needs. And we have already scheduled AttributeState, DocState, and RestState for 1-hour demos on the 22nd, the 29th, and then the 5th of April. watch for a follow-up email, and that will tell you how to sign in and how to sign up for those upcoming webinars. With this, let's open up the chat window and see what questions we have. We got one question. I'll take that one first. Sorry, Matt. There's a question around PPM and PPM's ability, or PPM's end of life or non-end of life based on Agile's end of life situation. So PPM is product portfolio management, which is one of the modules in Agile. Basically, it follows the same timeline as what the rest of the Agile product does, which is right now Oracle has extended support to 2030 officially, although unofficially we're already hearing 2032, which is not sure if that's true or not, but that was a date that I heard we heard recently. But so anyway, it basically means the same thing as for the rest of Agile. Right now it is supported to 2030 officially per Oracle, and what happens afterwards, that's going to be an Oracle decision. Then a couple more questions. These are more for you, Matt. One of the questions I have here is if AttributeState and DocState can read and write data to and from a database.
Sure, Dries. They actually can. We do have database support that's enabled for both of the products. So they actually have, for AttributeState, it has a configuration tab where you can set up one or more database connections. And then there's a library, a free marker library that's included with it that lets you do any of your common database stuff like queries, inserts, and updates, and calling stored functions and procedures. And the same goes for DocState. So if you are producing a report and you need to have that report perhaps pull data from either a database, it can connect into it and query data and then format it and present it. And it can also, along with that, like AttributeState, update data within the database if needed as well. So yep, that is supported with both of those products.
Okay. Another question is if RestState can be configured to only accept requests over HTTPS.
That's a good question. It can, yes. For RestState, one of the things we're looking at using it for a current customer is creating a supplier portal. And the way that we will do that is we'll have RestState behind a load balancer that's listening to on the outside world to the internet just on HTTPS with a full server certificate and everything, and that'll be how that supplier portal will connect in to read and update Agile data. And another thing to mention with RestState is when you do open it up like that, the HTTPS obviously takes care of your data transmission security that folks can't see the incoming and outgoing data, but it also only allows, it can only perform updates in your Agile system that the user that's logging into it is allowed to. So it observes the full Agile roles and privileges model. So that's another thing to add, that when someone logs into it, they can only do what they're allowed to do within the Agile user interface. So yeah, that's how it makes sure that we keep things secure, especially when you're opening it up to outside users outside your company intranet.
Okay, and then you were talking about automations on items and changes and so forth, but can AttributeState, sorry, can it also support modules like PG&C, PPM, PQM?
It can, yeah. Like we had the other question about PPM, it definitely can. In fact, one of the things we used to, recently, as use Agile internally to manage our projects and issues, statements of work and things like that. And one of the things back when we were using Agile was we were using PPM to track a lot of that stuff. So we read a lot of internal AttributeState rules to help with automation there, with pushing down dates and pushing down prices and things like that in PPM. So yeah, any Agile module it can interact with, similar to just the Agile SDK. So yeah, it certainly can.
Okay. The next question is about DocState. Whether DocState has the ability to extract attachment data from Agile. So I'm assuming that means within an attachment and just attachment metadata.
Right. It can do that. Yep. It has, like I mentioned earlier, it kind of has sort of plugins for generating Excel data, PDF data, MS Word data, any textual data. But one of the other plugins is just called the binary plugin, and that lets you perform more arbitrary logic to extract one or more files from Agile, for example, or you can grab a bunch of files from Agile and put them into a single zip file. So yeah, using that feature of it, it does allow you to get at your Agile attachments, pull them out, and then you can either write them out to the file system, or you can transmit them via an API downstream. So yeah, you can get at the data, and then you can either just have it downloaded to the user's browser if it's on demand, or if it's more event driven, triggered by like a workflow change or something like that, it could grab attachments and write them out to a network share or post them to an API. So
okay. So since I'm presenting, those were all the questions that I saw in this chat window. Any other questions that came in?
Yeah.
Looks like a couple
Matt,
more.
If you can see, yeah, go ahead. You can read them, Matt,
Yeah.
because I'm presenting. I can't see the chat.
Sure, yeah. So one other question we had was, can RestState retrieve attachments? And the answer is yes, it can. So it's able to, it kind of, and we'll be doing the demo in the coming weeks for it, for those that want to attend it, where we can get into a deeper dive on it. But it represents your Agile data pretty naturally as a hierarchy. So like, say you start with an item, you can get at its tables, and one of the tables is the attachments table. And then as part of that, you can get at the individual files and say, I want to download it. And it can even be for a particular revision of an item, if it's a part or document that's rep controlled, or it could be just if it's a change or manufacturer or something like that, it would just be the attachment, the current attachment added to it. So yep, RestState can do attachments. Another question we had about DocState was, can it replace the PDX format? And by that, I'm assuming what that means is just, can it generate something equivalent to PDX, or generate the PDX format if needed? And both answers would be yes there, since it's able to generate arbitrary text content and get at any of your Agile object data, drill down into relationships, tables, etc. You can definitely use it to generate PDX. And for example, with the Teleflex customer story we talked about earlier, one of the other pieces, we use RestState for the purpose-built UI, but we also utilize DocState to generate an augmented form of Agile Content Services XML, which was site-specific. So basically what we did was DocState took a look at items that were on multiple plants, and it would generate a block for that item for each plant in the ACS XML format. It just sort of extended it. What that let them do was, they had an SAP system that would consume this format, and it let them make their interface change much simpler on that side to be able to absorb these plant-specific bills of materials and items, versus having to come up with a whole new format. So we were able to like take an existing format Agile produced and augment it to support multiple sites. And there's one more DocState question, which is, could DocState compare two different documents for differences? And that is definitely something it could do, depending on the nature of the document. If it is a text document, then it can absolutely do that. If it's a binary file, you typically won't be able to do that. But if the question is geared more toward comparing, say, two textual documents, then yeah, it's definitely able to perform comparisons and illustrate what might be different between the two.
Okay, any other questions?
I believe that is all of them.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with this, we're at the end of our webinar. We hope it was very helpful to you. And as I mentioned, we will send out a link to the recording. And we hope to see you soon in one of the 3 webinars that we have announced, the 22nd, the 29th, and for April 5th. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks.